Hi everyone, so today I'm just going to be doing a little intro and just basics on how to navigate Rhino for Mac. I know that Stephanie has a lot of tutorials on Windows, so we figured that I should show just a really basic intro to Rhino for Mac, just so you can see just how it looks, what's different about it. But pretty much everything works the same, it just looks a little bit different. So when you open up a file, it's going to look something like this. So I'll just go through some of the tools and panels that we have going on here. So the panels that I have set up here, I think are the automatic ones. You have your properties, so that would be, right now, there's nothing on my file, so it's just showing me the properties of the viewport, which are these four squares right here. So you have your plan or top view, your perspective view, and then your two elevational views. I'll go through those in a second. But so now we have our properties viewport. If I had an object, let's say this line, and I click on this line, it's going to show me the properties of that specific object that I have selected, or multiple objects. Then we have our layers down here. This panel has a whole bunch of different things stocked inside of it, but I mainly just have the layers pulled up here, but you also have your named view. So if you wanted to go easily to a specific part of your project, you can make a named view for that specific area, and then you can easily access that and be taken right to that area. So if you want to have a Rhino file submitted, you can have some named views and the professor can go and click through them and see the different views of your project. And then you have your materials. Nothing selected, so I have no materials right now, but there's lots of different cool ways that you can add materials to your project. And then I also have this sun option here, so this can be really useful for doing shadow studies. So then up at the top, I think on PC, this and this is all at the bottom, but right now we have it all at the top here, and then you have your snappings on the left side. So we have our Gumball, we have ortho and planar. These are the three that you kind of click through the most. And then we have our snaps on the side. So these are things that Rhino is going to snap to when you're moving or drawing a line. For example, you can snap to the end of another line and draw right from there. You're kind of like keeping these on for the most part. You should check and make sure that these are on to start. And then we have these kind of like classic tools. I don't know what dictates what goes here, but these are kind of the classic tools that you probably will most often grab towards. And then you have your standard tools up at the top, and then a whole bunch of other tools. So everything that you could ever want is going to be up here, but you can also access any tool by typing it right into this command bar. But you actually don't need to type it into the command bar by clicking into it. You can pretty much be anywhere, have anything, you don't have to be clicking anything specific, and start typing, and it's going to automatically go into the command bar. So once you have your file opened, you might want to change the units. So you can do that by typing in units. And it's going to pull up this dialog box here, and maybe you want to change it to meters. It's going to ask if you want to scale the model. You can just say yes. And you can also put the precision of your decimal points down for meters. So now it's in meters. And anything that you draw, you can actually type in the dimension that you want in meters, and it's going to do that at whatever scale. Usually we work in 1:1 in Rhino. So if there's anything that I've learned, it's that if you want to do something, there's probably a command for it. When you think that there isn't, there probably is. It just needs a little bit of digging. Pretty much you can usually just type whatever you want and find something that'll work in the command options. So for example, if I know that I want a line, even if I just start writing the word line, you can see that there's a line option. There's a whole bunch of other options for what comes up when you type LI. So pretty much whatever you want, you can find it. You can also use the help button to find what you're looking for. Going back to the viewports here, I typically work in top view or perspective view. So if you want to access one of those specifically and just kind of use one to start, you can double click on either whichever view you want. So let's say I want to work in perspective, I could just double click on perspective. That's going to take me to that viewport. If I want to go back, I can either press this little four-corner icon here or double-click perspective again. In order to pan through your viewports, for the top and the elevational views, you can right-click with your mouse, and that's going to pan. So that's a right click. But in perspective, that's going to be orbit. So it's going to allow you to look around your object. If you want to pan in perspective, you can click this little hand button or type pan in your command bar. And then the left click is going to be selection. So Stephanie went through the different kinds of selections in her tutorial, so you can look through that. They're the same for Mac, but left click is select and right click is pan or orbit. So I have opened here a file that I worked on this summer for a grasshopper class. You can see how it looks when you have all of these layers. I tried to keep them pretty organized. We were actually marked on that, so I would recommend practicing layer organization as much as you can. It's really important, otherwise you'll have a bunch of things and you don't know how to find them. It's really useful, especially because if I wanted to select the contours, I can click on my contour layer, right click, select objects, and that's going to select the contours. So I don't have to go and select each contour, I can just select them because they're all on the same layer. So something that Stephanie went over that I'm just going to go over as well is the gumball. The gumball is really helpful. I use it all the time because Rhino works in 3D space, so there's X, Y, and Z. And Rhino can be a little bit finicky with moving things around in 3D space, so if you don't really have a destination picked out, you're going to end up with your object completely out in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to be really difficult. So I use the gumball when I know for sure where and how much I want to move things by. So let's say I wanted to move this entire object. I'm going to go into the perspective view here. Let's say that I wanted to move this entire object in the Z direction. So I would pick this gumball. I can either move it up just like that, or I can click on the Z direction and it's asking me for a distance to move in the Z direction. And since I'm working in meters, I can type in 5, for example, and that's going to move it up exactly 5 meters. I can also rotate around these axes by just using this little curves. Not sure what they're called, but they just allow you to move in these different axes. Now we can just go through how to quickly change the display options here. So like Stephanie showed in her tutorial, you can on a PC access the view display options by clicking just on the top here, but there's no drop-down menu for here on Mac, so you can just right-click actually just right on the window. So if I'm in perspective, I can just right-click on the window, and then your display options are down here. So I typically work in shaded, but let's say I wanted to look at my materials in the rendered view, or the shadow studies you can see in the rendered view as well. So if you click on that, that's going to look a little bit different. And if you right-click again, you can go to wireframe as well, and that's going to show you kind of the outlines of everything and not have any actual surface information, just the outlines. Okay, and so the last thing that we're going to do that I wish that I knew earlier that I just learned this summer is how to really use and take advantage of the seaplanes. So by default, your Rhino is set to world top, which means that basically the origin plane is what it's going to start with. So you can access your seaplanes by clicking on the seaplanes here, but you can actually use these and change them around to use to your advantage. So I'm going to start with a new file just to show you what I mean. So let's say I'm going to draw this in perspective. Let's say I have a box here, so I'm just going to make that box. And I'm putting it on shaded so you can see. So we have a box. And let's say I want to draw a window or maybe a chimney on the top of the box, but like I said, if I'm in perspective view and I don't have like the snappings properly turned on, if I think that I'm clicking on one part and start drawing whatever, it's likely going to be way off into space, not where you had intended it. So you can actually use seaplanes to take advantage of the surfaces that you have here. So if I'm going to go to seaplanes, and what you're going to use is set seaplane by 3 points. So if I want to draw windows on this side of the box, I'm going to make this a seaplane. So I'm going to just choose 3 corners of the box. And now, as you can see, the seaplane has oriented towards just this side of the box. So that means that if I have planar turned on and project turned on, it's only going to draw on this 2D space. So I can show you what I mean by that. If I draw a window cutout, I know that it's going to be exactly where I want it to. And then if I can turn these off, I can use this and extrude into my building. Then I'm going to use the split command. So I'm going to type split. So I'm going to select my objects to split. I want to split this box using my window. So I'm going to select the objects to split. Select the cutting objects is going to be the extrusion. There. Perfect. So now I have a cutout part of my box. And I have a whole window. And that was a lot easier than trying to find and make sure that I'm on the actual surface that I think I'm drawing on. So that can be really useful, and I wish that I knew how to use those sooner. This can also be nice if you have different levels of a plaza, for example, and you want to start drawing in paving patterns. You can just put your seaplane to the top of your plaza or wherever level you want to start drawing on, and make sure that you're drawing exactly on that level, and you don't have to fix it all later when it's off in random space. Now to get back to the original seaplane, you just want to set seaplane to world top. It's going to set it back to normal. So here's one more example of how to use the seaplanes to your advantage. Let's say I want to add a chimney or something on top of this roof. I'm going to set seaplane by 3 points. And I'm going to make sure that my snappings are on. Make sure that I click one end, one corner, another corner. Now my seaplane is exactly on the top of that building. So if I have, let's say, planer and project on, I can make a square there and extrude. And let's say I want it to be 2 meters. Just type in 2. And there we have it. It's perfectly exactly where I want it to be and not off in the middle of space. And now we're back to normal. Okay, and just a few things about the layers. So this works pretty much the same as the Windows version, except that instead of check marks for which layer is currently active, you have these little circles. You have your visible or non-visible layer on and off. You can lock layers, you can change the color as they appear. So if I wanted to make these buildings something other than purple, I could change the color to pink, for example. And then you can also like move these around depending on what you use most. I think I have it set to the default. I might have gotten rid of a thing or two, but to change the layer that you're actively working on, so you always want to work on the layer that you intend to work on. So let's say that I want to work on making a new building, then I would probably just click and activate the Refined Context Buildings layer so that I can be sure that I'm drawing in the right layer. Alright, so I think that that is all. If anyone does have a Mac and they want some specific advice, or they're lost and can't seem to find or figure out how to do something, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to help you out.